name is Craig Nash, and we'd like to welcome you to another It's a Grand Life. And we'd like to say a special hello to our new listeners in Texas, Nevada, Colorado, Florida, and even Alabama. I've been hearing of folks all around the country that are tuning into It's a Grand Life. You know, there's approximately, I've got to get the exact number, but I believe the number is somewhere around 3 million grandparents across the country that are raising their grands. So there's a little army of us out there, and we all need to be informed about what are the best solutions for our grandkids as we're raising them. And it's our objective here at It's a Grand Life to present subject matter experts that really understand their field of expertise and share that information with you, and at a great location focused specifically on grandparents raising grands, on the grand family. So you never know when you're going to need an expert physical therapist, occupational therapist, speech language pathologist with an expertise in kids. And our guest today is the expert here in Michigan on providing those therapies for little kiddos. And her name is Kris Krajewski, and she's with a group called MetroEHS. Kris, we're just delighted to have you here on It's a Grand Life. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you're so welcome. Good morning, everybody. And thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to share our experience and expertise, and maybe help some grandparents with grand families out there find a path forward if they find themselves struggling in some of these areas.
Well, there's nothing like knowing an expert. And I think you're really going to be such a blessing to our audience, and whether they're in Michigan or not. But you are a speech language professional. And why don't you give us a little bit about your background, how you got into this space, and what you really like about the mission and vision of MetroEHS.
All right, thank you. Well, so yes, I am a speech and language pathologist. I have been practicing as a speech language pathologist for a long time, for a long time. And I have worked in a variety of settings, including intervention with adults and in pediatrics, in school settings, and private practice as well. So I've had kind of run the gamut of experience in speech and language pathology, working with individuals who have challenges with communication and in feeding and swallowing, which is an area that many people don't realize that speech and language pathologists have expertise in. That is one of our primary areas of focus as well. So I started working with MetroEHS Pediatric Therapy as a school therapist, kind of way back in the 90s. And have since really taken to the pediatric population. I don't think I realized how much I love pediatrics until after I had my own children. I have 3 kiddos, and my middlest child actually has Down syndrome. So she has disabilities that are cognitive in nature, and also with communication, and some physical disabilities as well. So you know, it was a bit of a shock. It was not something we expected. And I was really lost as to where to begin with her. And Craig, I think I was telling you last week, if somebody hadn't been there to put a pamphlet in my hand and kind of push me in a direction, I'd probably be still standing there like a deer in the headlights, wondering where to begin. So it's okay to feel that way at the beginning when you're bombarded with a lot of information. Because there is a lot of information out there, it's okay to take it one step at a time and find a path forward that works best for your grand family. So in my case, I just became so fascinated with the way my typically developing kiddos developed versus my not typically developing kiddo. And I realized very quickly that they all develop, they all grow, they all learn, but just differently. And it was kind of my job to tap into those differences, to figure out how to get learning in there. And really, I think as parents and grandparents, we are in really the best position to know our kids and to know what makes them tick and what doesn't in their real world where it really matters.
Absolutely. And I just want to point out for our audience at home, you specialize in this, and it was still a curveball. for you to adjust to this situation. And I know everything's worked out great, but it's so if you're listening to this at home or in your car or wherever you are, don't be intimidated. There is a pathway. You're not alone. And Kris is going to point the way here. So you specialize in MetroEHS with of course the main three therapies, PT, OT, and speech, but you guys do more than that. What is that all about?
Yeah, we really work hard at Metro to collaborate and wrap around our families and our clients with as many services as possible that they will benefit from. So we offer, as you said, speech therapy services, physical therapy, occupational therapy, which, by the way, is all about fostering independence with self-care, working on fine motor skills, which means just using, doing small motor tasks like writing and using the upper body to do things, and feeding and swallowing too. We also have physical therapy services. In addition, we have ABA services, and what ABA means is Applied Behavior Analysis. And this is a specific treatment for our kiddos who have the diagnosis of autism. In addition to all of those, we offer nutrition services. So some of our clients have struggles with being able to maintain healthy nutrition because they have certain aversions or difficulty being able to take in food and liquid. We also offer some mental health services, both for our clients and families, because this can be a really stressful time. And it can impact the entire family unit, not just that one little kiddo. So we really want to wrap around our families and support them in every way they need as their kiddos embark upon this sort of therapy journey. It is a lot of work. But we really rely on our family members, our grand family members, and our caregivers to be a part of that team. And I want to highlight that specifically. Our family members and our caregivers, they know their children better than anybody else. So we really want to include them in what they need to see. And working on those areas. What do you want to see your little doing in a year's time? Okay, that's our goal, right? And then we work to get there. We want changes to be made that carry over into the world where people live. So we feel that we can do this best by offering a multitude of services from a variety of sort of different lenses, so that we can work together and support our kids and get them through treatment. And for our younger children, the goal is to get them ready for school, which is what life is for kids, right? And just to try to get them in and out of this intervention phase and into a school setting where they can just be kids, live life.
And our listeners may be wondering, boy, this is the end of school year time. Is this really a good time to talk about getting folks ready for school? And as you and I talked last week, it absolutely is, because it takes a while to orient the children with these new treatment protocols to get them ready for school. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, yes, I would agree for sure. We never think it's too early to intervene, and they're really, as far as from school starting, there isn't really a bad time to begin. We want to plan ahead so that we can work toward that goal of school readiness and have plenty of time for our kiddos to be able to meet those goals and be able to then move forward. So never a bad time.
No, but I was thinking with our life as grandparents revolves around the school calendar. And we're thinking, well, I have some time to wait till September. Not really. If we can get the kiddos involved with their therapy regimen now, they will really be much better equipped to start school in the fall, or to get in their appropriate age and what have you. So, but as you and I were talking, things tend to start with the pediatrician, don't they? I mean, that's where it all begins, with the physicians. How does that work as far as you actually getting the referral and beginning the treatment regimen for the patient?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And again, that's where many of us struggle. Where do I go first? And I think that if you are having concerns about your grandchild's development or how they're doing with meeting milestones, communication, and so on. If you see some things that you might be concerned about being a struggle, by all means, the first stop is that child's pediatrician. They are able to listen to your concerns and then refer you to the appropriate specialists for testing. Maybe that's warranted. Maybe they are able to reassure you that everything seems to be falling in line. Either way, having that open discussion with a pediatrician and letting them know your concerns is where you begin. Oftentimes they will recommend certain specialty testing to help rule things in or rule things out, whatever the case may be.
Right.
And then they're directing you really to individuals who have an expertise in a very specific area. And I think that, they have those resources where you might not know your friendly neighborhood speech therapist, right? But your pediatrician does. So by all means, at that starting point, that's a great place to begin. Doctors will usually initiate this process by writing a prescription, much like they would for a medication. A prescription for example, physical therapy evaluation. And that is where you begin with that prescription in hand. And a resource, you can contact that resource and schedule an evaluation in that particular area.
That's absolutely great. And that's always a great place to start with the doctor. And for folks that are out state, now, if you're in Michigan, MetroEHS has, I think you said you're opening your 14th location in Southeast Michigan. So there's probably not a spot anywhere if you're near us here in Southeast Michigan where there's not a MetroEHS from a coverage standpoint. But if you are in Las Vegas, you would need to chat with your pediatrician and try and get a referral to an outpatient clinic that specializes in pediatric PTOT speech and the applied behavioral analysis and also integrate the behavioral health into the one setting, which is so important, like you folks have at MetroEHS, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, for sure. And I know that sometimes, because evaluations and treatments can be an expense, you are able to use insurance coverage. Many individuals have these types of things covered by their insurance policies. So I would encourage our grand families to look into those insurance policies to see if those services are covered and where they might be able to attend. For example, certain practices may or may not accept certain types of insurance. So you might have to do a little bit of investigation to find a resource that is convenient for you, but also accepts that insurance coverage so that you are able to rely upon that.
Well, I was encouraged to know that MetroEHS has not only traditional private insurance like Blue Cross and others, but you also take Medicaid, right? And
we do accept some of the Medicaids that go through insurances. So yes, we do have that option available, and we welcome and value those relationships as well. With our Medicaid clients, often we are in close contact. They are assigned a case manager through Medicaid. So there are individuals through the Medicaid system that can assist our families in finding those services and helping them to navigate all of the things that are needed, and get them started. So right. It is a really nice system where you can have that resource individual who sort of helps to coordinate everything for you.
And I know you also integrate not only with the pediatrician, but also with the school district, right? That's where you started. So, and the schools.
Yeah,
right?
That's where I started. Yeah, that is where I started. And it was always really, as a school therapist, the type of intervention that you receive in a school may look different than a very intensive one-on-one type of therapy that an outpatient clinic like MetroEHS provides. But you can certainly you can certainly approach your school district if you have concerns. Again, this is another avenue. The pediatrician is one resource, but perhaps your grandchild is in school currently. Our public schools provide these services for their students. And so this is another resource, another pathway for you to go to sort of initiate, voice your concerns and initiate requests for different types of evaluations. So that is another avenue for our kiddos, maybe who are a little bit older and currently in school. Oftentimes, during the learning processes in school, that's where we start to really see our kiddos with maybe some challenges, really show those challenges, right? Because school is a little bit more structured. There's a little bit more expectation on those kiddos. So at times we may not catch some of the more subtle issues until kids get to school and start to struggle.
And that's when that coordinated approach is so valuable. The pediatrician, the school, and the clinical team at MetroEHS. And Kris, before I let you go, did we touch on the feeding and swallowing issues? I think that's something that parents, you may have mentioned that, and I just want to make sure we highlight that as well, because parents may not know you guys do that as well.
Yes, we do. We do. There is actually a new diagnosis out there. It's relatively new. It's called pediatric feeding disorder, PFD. Okay. And this was not historically recognized as its own thing, but it truly is its own thing, and it has now an official name and diagnosis. And there are some statistics that tell us that pediatric feeding disorder is more common, more prevalent than even autism is. So I found that really fascinating, for sure. And pediatric feeding disorders really involve a child who struggles to eat. And then there could be many reasons that this is happening. Sometimes, particularly in our kids with autism, there are differences in the sensory world. And by that, what I mean is, there's an environment out there, and we all sort of take that environment in through our senses. Sometimes when kiddos have sort of different wiring, right? Different ways of thinking and processing things up here, that stuff that comes in through the world and is worked on by the brain can be processed and interpreted very differently. So think of things that you might find kind of aversive. For me, fingernails on a blackboard, everybody's favorite example, right? Imagine taking in the world and maybe something more common in the environment feels like fingernails on a blackboard to you. Right? You're going to go in a different direction. Right. Most of us take in the world in a certain way, and we're able to sort of hang in there, tolerate it, maybe even screen some things out, focus on what's important. But some of our kids have a lot of difficulty being able to sort of sort all that stuff out. And this can happen with feeding. And in this case, you might find people who really are aversive to certain textures of foods. They just really wig them out. Maybe even in the way a food looks can be enough to turn someone off. I won't go there. And in some of these cases, it can really have a negative impact on nutritional health, right? And so we want to be able to help our kids develop a tolerance for and be willing to, in a very safe environment, explore foods. Maybe we start by just having it in the room. Maybe we kind of gradually upgrade to maybe looking at it, touching it, maybe even smelling it, right? That's a big deal. And eventually being willing to, in a very safe environment and very gradually on their terms, be able to taste and try different foods. So that's one example of how we might intervene in that feeding and swallowing area. Another one is some of our kiddos really struggle with the actual movement, strength, range of motion, being able to really safely chew, manipulate food in the mouth and kind of swallow it down, right? And we can work in that realm as well to help kids get better at being able to chew and swallow food safely.
Well, I hope our listeners can pick up the level of expertise that it takes in dealing with these types of therapies. They're not alone. It's a coordinated effort with your pediatrician, with your school district, and also with your clinician. And Kris Krajewski, we can't thank you enough for being our guest here on It's a Grand Life. And at the bottom of our screen, you'll be able to see how you can contact the folks at MetroEHS. And if you have questions, can our listeners call you and call the clinic? What would you recommend to get to answers regarding how to get started?
I think that would be wonderful. You can absolutely call our clinic location. We can certainly assist you or point you into a direction of someone who can better assist you depending on the situation. If you have a grandchild who has a diagnosis of autism or you're concerned about that, another resource to go to if you're just kind of wondering where to start in Michigan is the Autism Alliance of Michigan. This is an alliance or a group of professionals who have a lot of resources for parents and for grandparents and families for where to start and how to navigate in all of the areas of concern: development, financial, transportation, all of the things that can impact a family trying to get services for their kiddos. So that's another amazing resource for you.
Kris, that is absolutely terrific, and I wasn't aware of that. And I'm sure our listeners, our guests, our folks at home aren't aware of that as well. Some of them, and that's why it's so important to have folks like Kris Krajewski here on It's a Grand Life to help us navigate the land that we're not that familiar with, but we need to have this expertise as we raise these grants. So, thanks so much for being our guest here today. I want to encourage you at home. Call the folks at MetroEHS, get the answers that you need. If they don't have the answers, you can tell by listening to Kris, they're going to point you in the right direction so that your grandson or granddaughter can get the care that they need so the whole family can live a grand life. Thank you so much for being our guest again, Kris, and have a great rest of the day.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it very much. You have a wonderful day too.
Thank you for joining us for another It's a Grand Life. Remember to never waste your pain. God can use your situation to bless others even halfway around the world. Be sure and subscribe to It's a Grand Life on our Facebook page, as well as YouTube and any of the various podcast channels that feature the Grand Life podcast. When it comes to raising a grand family, remember the words of the Apostle Paul, who said in 1 Corinthians 13, "Love is patient, love is kind, it always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. Love never fails." In leading your grand family, it's going to take faith, hope, and a whole lot of love. Please reach out to me. I can be a blessing to you and pray for you, or help you connect to free resources that can make your journey a little easier.